Time to talk about the final archetype of Phantom Revengers, Aniacraft. Hey guys, Otaka here, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about the third and final archetype of Phantom Revengers, which will be Enneacraft, and in my personal opinion, the worst one. So Enneacraft is a pendulum flip-based archetype, really just kind of a weird combination. But the archetype has basically what I'm going to call two segments. It has the pyramids and then it has the beasts. The pyramids have their own effects that basically get the combo started, whereas the beasts are the cards that you typically want to be ending on. They also have this concept that you get counters on them, and they have two different counters, and we'll get into this when we get into the cards. But basically, the counters can change the state of the game, but one of them currently doesn't do anything from my understanding, whereas the other one can actually, like, win the game if you have enough of them. Just overall, between the three archetypes, this archetype seems like the less fleshed out one, the one that Konami kind of just threw off into the distance, basically like Ryugi. But before we do jump on into the archetype though, I have noticed that a great deal of you that are watching this video right now are not currently subscribed to the channel. I am trying to surpass 2,500 subscribers before Christmas, so if you like competitive-based content, whether it is in-depth guides, introductory guides, or hell, even market watches, consider subscribing to the channel for more. But also, don't forget to leave a like on this video and comment down below if Aniacraft is the deck of choice for you. It is also not required, but it is greatly appreciated. But if you would like to further support the channel, then consider joining my community Discord, following me over on Twitch, and using my TCG affiliate link. Or if you would like to save 15% off the next time you want to get a new deck box, a new playmat, or even some new card sleeves, then consider using my Dueling Guard affiliate link. All links be in the description down below. Alright, so in Enneacraft, there are no extract monsters because it's a pendulum-based archetype and flip-based archetype as well. So they all act very similar to the Deus Ex Crawler card, where they actually activate when they're face down defense mode, which is a very rare thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think we only have one card other than Deus Ex Crawler that does that. It's just a very rare thing, but it's cool to see that they're expanding upon that, because flip archetypes do need that little extra push to be able to do stuff like that. However, do strap in though, because we have a lot of reading to do since it is a pendulum-based archetype. We're going to start with the pyramids. Like I said in the beginning of the video, we have pyramids, and then we have the beasts. The pyramids are the cards that kind of get the deck started, whereas the beasts are the cards that you want to end on. So we're going to start with Enneacraft symbol Orgia. The pendulum effect is each time a monster is flipped face up, place one Synquisition counter on this card. You can pay 900 life points for cost, reveal 3 Enneacraft cards from your deck. Your opponent randomly picks one for you to add to your hand, also shuffle the rest back into the deck. So the big thing here is that all of the pyramids pretty much have the same pendulum effect. You pay 900, reveal 3 Enneacraft cards, not spells or monsters, 3 Enneacraft cards, and then your opponent picks one, and then you put that in your hand, and the other 2 get shuffled back into the deck. I'm pretty sure they all have this effect. The monster effect is you can reveal this card in your hand, special summon one monster from your hand in face-down defense position. You cannot special summon the turn you activate this effect, except in face-down defense position. When your opponent activates a monster effect in the hand, quick effect, you can change this set card to face-up defense position and add one Enneacraft card from deck to hand. If this card is flipped face up, destroy one monster your opponent controls. So the perks of the pyramids is that they do have like a little extra bonus effect. So they all the Enneacraft monsters have that first line of text in their monster effect. You can reveal it and then special a monster from your hand to face down defense position. You do not have to special summon the revealed monster, which does add a little sense of mystery to your opponent, because I don't believe you actually have to reveal the monster you're putting face down. Like, it doesn't have to be public knowledge. So you can reveal this card, shuffle your hand, and then summon a guy. So there is that, and like I said, they all have this effect where if your opponent does something, you can activate their effect in face down defense position, flip them up. This one in particular, when it's flipped face up, it pops a card. We then have Enneacraft B Alizonia. It has the exact same pendulum effect, and the first line of text is also the exact same in the monster effect. But let's go ahead and get to the flip effect. When your opponent activates a card or effect that includes an effect that adds a card from deck to hand, you can change this set card to face-up defense position and add an Enneacraft card from your deck to your hand. If this card is flipped face up, banish one random card from your opponent's hand face up until the end of the turn. Whereas the first guy, when it was flipped face up, pops a card, this guy will hand rip, essentially. You just banish a card from your opponent's hand until the end phase, so they do get it back, unfortunately. The Enneacraft Acaneria, the same effect for the pendulum effect, again, all the pyramids have the exact same pendulum effect. The quick effect is when your opponent activates a card in the graveyard or banishment, you can change this set card to face up defense position and add a Aniacraft card from deck to hand. So you're getting the gist. So all of the pyramids, when your opponent does something, they flip face up and then they add an Aniacraft to hand, basically giving yourself crackback, but then they have flip effects to then benefit you on the next chain. So if this card is flipped face up, shuffle up to 3 cards from your opponent's graveyard or banishment into their deck. So just graveyard manipulation, essentially. And then we have Aniacraft F, Atro Maria. Same pendulum effect, same first line of text. The quick effect is when your opponent activates a card or effect that includes an effect that special summons a monster, flip this card face up and add a Aniacraft card to hand. If this card is flipped face up, negate the effects of one effect monster your opponent controls until the end of this turn. So it's like a pseudo imperm. So you basically get the gist of it. The Aniacraft pyramid monsters have the ability that when they're in the pendulum scale, they can add any Aniacraft card from deck to hand, and it says reveal 3, but spoiler alert, we're running 3 of everybody, so you can basically manipulate, kind of like my friend Pearly way back when during Pearly format, you can manipulate which one you get. Doesn't matter which card your opponent randomly chooses, because you're going to get the one you want. And then they also can get Synquisition counters, which we'll get to that in a moment. And then when your opponent does a specific thing, depending on which one you have in face down defense position, you can then quick effect, flip it face up, add a random Aniacraft card hand, and then on a new chain, you can do a different effect because it has a flip effect, depending on which one you flip face up. Let's go ahead and talk about the beasts. The first one is Aniacraft Izab Leon. Its pendulum effect, each time a monster is flipped face up, place 1 Synquisition counter on this card. At the end of the battle phase, if you have an Aniacraft card in your other pendulum zone, you can target one monster your opponent controls with less attack than this card, destroy it. All of the beasts have this exact same effect. So all of the beasts have the same pendulum effect as each other. All of the pyramids have the same effect as each other. The beasts have the ability to, at the end of the battle phase, if there's another Aniacraft card in the other pendulum zone from themselves, then you can target a monster your opponent controls with less attack and destroy it. They all have that effect, whereas the pyramids have the effect to add basically any card from deck to hand. The monster effect, same thing. Reveal this card, special summon a guy from hand, then you're locked to special summoning to face down defense position. Big whoop. When your opponent activates a card or effect in response to the activation of your card or effect, quick effect, you can change this set card face up defense position, return up to 3 cards on the field to the hand. After this card was flipped face up while it was in the monster zone, each time a card is added to your opponent's hand by their card effect, inflict 900 damage to your opponent for each card. So basically, if your opponent responds to any of these guys' effects, because it just says if your opponent activates a card in response to your card or effect, then you can flip it face up. So if you scale your Orgia and then activate its pendulum effect to add any Aniacraft card from deck to hand, and this guy's set face down, your opponent goes Ash Blossom, then you can flip this, return 3 cards on the field to the hand, and then on the resolution, you can then proceed to have this pseudo floodgate-ish effect that every time your opponent activates a card effect while it is flipped face up in the monster zone, then your opponent will just proceed to take damage for every card they add. So like if they go Pot of Greed, then they take 1800 damage because they drew 2 cards. And the big thing to note about that is it's not even until the end of the turn. If this card was flipped face up, from that point on in the rest of the duel, unless it leaves the field, then your opponent takes 900 damage for every card they add to their hand. That is not until the end of the turn. It just says after this card was flipped face up while it's in the monster zone. We then have Enneacraft Archetype. Same pendulum effect, same first line of text. When your opponent activates a card or effect that would destroy a card on the field, doesn't have to be your card, just destroys a card on the field, you can change the set card to face up defense position. Monsters and Enneacraft spells you control cannot be destroyed by card effects for the rest of this turn. After this card is flipped face up while it's in the monster zone, each time a monster is sent to your opponent's graveyard, inflict 900 damage to your opponent. So you're getting the gist of what the beasts do. They are able to respond to your opponent doing other actions, and you're going to basically understand that all these Aniacraft cards, when they're flipped face down, will respond to literally any action your opponent takes. Just depends on which ones you have set. which means you can kind of morph your end board to fit the style of deck that your opponent is playing. And one thing to kind of notice here is they're not once a turn. So you could, like, if your opponent's doing a bunch of adding, you can end on the Alozonia, but you can also end on the Leon in like multiple copies of it, because again, these aren't like once per turn cards, which is crazy. Even the special summon from hand effect is not once a turn, so you could keep revealing the same guy and special the rest. Now, the thing to also note here though about the Archetype is, unlike the Leon, it doesn't say 900 damage for each card sent to the graveyard. So if 2 cards are sent to the graveyard at the same time, they still only take 900 damage. We then have Aniacraft Asta Pixia, same pendulum effect, same first line of text. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a card you control, quick effect, you can change this set card to face up defense position, negate that effect, then you can banish 1 random card from your opponent's hand face down. And then the flip effect is after this card was flipped face up, while it is in the monster zone, your opponent cannot target cards in the field or graveyard with card effects. Doesn't say your field or graveyard, and doesn't say their field or graveyard. They cannot target any cards on either field or graveyard for the rest of the turn, or not even the rest of the turn, as long as this card is face up. You have to get this fucker off the board some way, somehow, if you want to be able to target anything in your graveyard, in their graveyard, your field, or their field. Like, this one's really fucking powerful, and it's a hand rip, which is insane. And lastly, we have the face of the archetype, the big mascot. We have Enneacraft, Tori F. Mar. Same pendulum effect, same first line of text. When your opponent activates a card or effect on the field during your turn, quick effect, you can change this set card to face up defense position, negate the activation. If you do, destroy that card. This is like good going second as well, because like they establish a board and then you just immediately summon this guy out. If it successfully hits the board, then you can negate things that activate on the board. It is an omni negate at that point, but this can stop like shit like Imperm, Impulse, Purge, just dumb shit. Just a particularly good card, like I said, the face of the archetype. But the flip effect is, if this card is flipped face up, change all monsters your opponent controls to face down defense position. So it's a Book of Eclipse for your opponent specifically. Monsters changed to face down defense position by this effect cannot change their battle position. So this is like a Book of Eclipse mixed with a Floodgate Trap Hole. Absolutely love that. This, like I said, face of the archetype, and probably the better one in my opinion. Either the Tori or the Asta are like the best cards in the archetype in my opinion. This deck also has 2 spells and 1 field spell, but the Enneacraft Rebirth, shuffle any number of Enneacraft monsters from your hand and or face up field into the deck. Then draw cards equal to the number of shuffled cards. If your opponent normal special summons a monster while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then activate one of these effects. Special summon an Enneacraft monster from your hand in face down defense position. Change all face down defense position Enneacraft monsters you control to face up defense position. So you can just instantly like start with this card, get a, put a couple guys in your hand, draw some guys. And then you can, on your opponent's turn, make it so you can actually summon a guy from hand, which is really good to be able to do on your opponent's turn. But you can also just flip all your guys up. So if you have like multiple copies of Archetype and Leon on the field, you can just start shredding your opponent's life points like that. That being said, I don't particularly know how good the second effect could be, because they all have the ability to interact with your opponent and do things when your opponent does something. Like the Alozonia, when your opponent adds a card, rip a card from your opponent's hand. When your opponent targets or destroys stuff, then you can flip these 2 guys up. When your opponent activates a card on your turn, you can tell them no. Like there's so many bonus effects to flipping these guys up that you only get when you're responding to your opponent. So there is that. We then have Enneacraft Release. Place 1 Enneacraft Pendulum monster from your deck into the Pendulum Zone. If this card is in your graveyard except the turn it was sent there, you can banish it. Add 1 face-up Enneacraft monster from your extra deck to your hand. You can only activate 1 Enneacraft Release per turn. This one's like not as good in my opinion. Like it can get the ball rolling with its first effect. That second effect is not particularly amazing because all the Enneacraft monsters are pretty substantial, minus the pyramids with only 1,000 defense. But like the big beasts monsters are 2,500 defense alone, which means they're pretty big in numbers. And so it's going to be difficult for your opponent to like get these into the graveyard. A big thing like I think is probably pretty good against this deck is like Ghost Ogre, because you're still activating the monster effect on the field to flip it face up. So you can like Ghost Ogre and tell him no, and at that point it doesn't get flipped face up. We then have the field spell, which is a Aniacraft, the Synquisition City. It is a field spell. This card is always treated as an Enneacraft card, which means it is searchable off of the Pyramid's pendulum effects. Once per turn during the end phase, remove all Synquisition counters from the field, and if you do, inflict 900 damage to your opponent for each. You can only use each of the following effects of Aniacraft, the Synquisition City, once per turn. You can target any number of Enneacraft pendulum monsters you control, return them to the hand. If an Enneacraft pendulum monster you control is flipped face up during the main phase, you return to the hand or place in your pendulum zone one of them. So the idea here is that the deck is constantly stacking counters. It does say during the end phase. So if you end up like flipping a couple of these guys on your turn, which is like another reason that the rebirth could be good, is because if you have rebirth and like you have 5 of them set and then you have 1 in the pendulum zone, then you flip them all up, and then then they all, if regardless who's in the pendulum zone, they all have the ability that when a monster's flip face up, they gain a Synquisition counter. So if you flip 5 of them face up, that's 5 Synquisition counters alone, just from using Rebirth's second effect, to then burn your opponent during the end phase for the 4,500 damage. Like, that's a lot of damage just from one card. The idea of getting this off isn't like super realistic, but even when you do, you can then, when they're all flip face up, then you can return one of them to hand. And then of course, if you have like the Leon and the tail on the field, you just keep them face up on the field and they're gonna burn your opponent for doing random shit. So there is obviously a benefit. Like, the idea of the deck, I think, is just a burn control strategy. Like, you're just controlling the board so that way your opponent doesn't do anything super crazy, and then also burning them for 900 for random actions on top of that. It's gimmicky, and I think that it won't be nearly as viable of a strategy as a lot of people will think, but I mean, it's an option. So the Aniacraft deck is pretty cut and dry on what you're trying to do. You want all the bodies. You want to have as many bodies on the field as humanly possible. And on top of that, you want to be able to control the board state. So the idea here is that we're going to have 3 Leon, 2 Archetype, 2 Pixia, 3 of the Omni-Negate, and then we're going to have 3 of every pyramid, because all the pyramids are starters. We're going to have 3 Release, 3 Extravagance, we're going to have 3 Book of Eclipse, and then we're going to have 3 Synquisition City, and then we're going to have 3 Dharma Cannon and 3 Punishment. You can play the other spell that like flips a bunch of guys up, but it's not nearly as valuable as like Release, just being able to place a guy into the pendulum zone, because it realistically is a starter, because it can get one of the pyramids into the pendulum zone so you can start your turn, and then the second effect can have some application. We of course don't really care about our extra deck in a scenario like this, so Extravagance is of course helpful. Book of Eclipse is obviously just really good for controlling the game state, but also getting your guys back to face down defense position, because they are not once a turn. So getting them back to the face down defense position means that they can then activate their effect again if your opponent meets the conditions. The Dharma Cannon is same scenario. You just flip everybody face down. The Dogmatic Punishment is just for, again, controlling the game state, sending like an Intis to pop a guy and whatnot. Now, I'm going to show off a combo, and I put that very lightly. Like, combo is very generous for what I'm about to show you, because if you haven't gathered it already, like, this is a very hand-specific deck. It's not really a combo deck, and that's fair. But I do want to be able to show like what one card can be capable of doing. We're going to start, I believe, with just one of the pyramids, because starting any of them means that you have access to basically the rest of the deck, because they can add any Aniacraft card, which obviously is helpful. But again, this isn't a combo style deck, so what it's capable of doing off of one card isn't like a lot. And on top of that, as I mentioned earlier before, you build your end board around what your opponent's deck is going to do, rather than just like this cookie cutter, you end on this shit every time and you win the game. This is a deck that's very specific to, I want to end on this guy because my opponent's going to be adding cards. I want to end on this guy because my opponent does graveyard effects. I want to end on this guy because this deck does a lot of targeting. It's very specific to what your opponent's play style is for their deck. So, and it's also hand dependent as well. So I can't give any like cookie cutter, this is what you want to end on. So take that with a grain of salt when we go into the combo here. So for the combo, we're just doing like a random hand, just completely random, because the deck heavily benefits off of, you know, what you open. So for this example, you know, we opened 2 of the Orgia, 1 of the Trimaria, and 1 of the Archetype. So we're going to go ahead and scale the Trimoa, activate spec, pay 900, reveal 3 of the same guy. We're going to add the field spell, so we revealed 3 of the field spell. We're then going to activate the field spell. We're going to scale the Orgia, pay 900 to add another guy. In this example, we are going to add the release this time around. We're going to activate the field spell, put both of them back in our hand from the scales. We're going to activate the release to put a card from the scale. We're going to put the Alazonia into the scale. We're going to activate its effect, pay another 900 to add another card from deck to hand. This time we're getting the Whale. So we're going to proceed to just start summoning guys in face down defense positions. So we're going to reveal the Whale again, summon another guy. Whale again, summon another guy. And you get the gist. Like, we're just summoning a bunch of dudes. So that way we end on like a vital end board piece. We're going to then scale these guys, because the idea here is that we are going to have our scales, because they both will gain the counters for every guy that's flipped face up, and then in the end phase, the field spell is going to hit our opponent. So if our opponent meets any of the conditions to get these guys flipped face up, counter, counter. Flip this guy, counter, counter. So we can actually end on 8 counters, which means that's 4,000 damage hitting our opponent. Not to mention, we're ending on the archetype for this example, which means anytime our opponent has cards sent to their graveyard for any reason, they take 900 damage. So they could very well, if they don't deal with the field spell, they can end up getting really screwed in terms of their life at the end of their own turn. Obviously, we would set this Book of Eclipse so then we can reset these guys, so that way you know, we can just proceed to burn them again, but also control the board, so maybe, you know, save the field spell as well. But the perks with the Archetype, when it is flip face up, your opponent cannot target your stuff, which is really good. And again, that's really it. Like, it's not much of a combo deck. It has the ability to get to pretty much access the full deck, which is nice, but it is not crazy by any means. Now, the perks of the field spell too is that if, say, you know, you flip the Whale on your opponent's turn, you can use the field spell to put the Whale in the pendulum zone, so that way you can proceed to have, you know, more counters, just in case, you know, you only end on like one guy in the back row pendulum zone. I do think ending on like guys in the pendulum zone so you can burn your opponent is of course good, but again, this is a really hard deck to talk about a combo with, because it's so heavily reliant on what your opponent is trying to do, because you're gonna craft your end board based around what your opponent's deck does. And that is going to be it for the Aniacraft introductory guide. I didn't put it at the beginning of the video, but I do want to remind everybody here, this is an introductory guide. This is not an in-depth guide to explain the nitty-gritty of the deck, you know, how to play the deck with the utmost proficiency. This is just to lay down the foundation and just kind of give you guys an idea of what the deck is capable of doing, but, you know, not, you know, every little detail. I'm just trying to possibly gauge interest. Maybe this isn't a deck that was on your radar, and then, you know, after this video, you're like, well, I might give that a try. That's the whole purpose of this video. I am not trying to do anything super in-depth. Now, if you ask in the comments, I probably still won't do it, because this doesn't really you know, tickle my fancy as a deck. I will gladly do Hecka Hands in-depth guide. I'll very gladly do a Killer Tune in-depth guide, but I'm not really, you know, fancying this deck. But if this is something that you are interested in, you know, all more power to you. And with that, if you're not already and you like competitive-based content, then definitely make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're trying to surpass 2,500 subscribers before Christmas. We are getting really close, so any and all support is greatly appreciated. But also, definitely leave a like on this video and comment down below your thoughts on the Aniacraft. But with that, I'll see you all in the next one. See ya.